let's go ahead and kick this off with you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves. So Wes.
Hello everyone, I'm Wesley Kerr, machine learning scientist team lead at Adknowledge. So I work with Scott. Our team is responsible for generating those billions of recommendations for serving up ads for the users on the internet. My PhD is from the University of Arizona. It's in computer science with an emphasis on artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's about it.
My name is John Young. I have a PhD in applied statistics and research methods. I head up data analytics for Adknowledge, and it's good to see some other Adknowledge engineers here. We think that's pretty cool. So I'm basically in charge of data analytics for the company, whether that's big data solutions for the company or providing insights to the channels around what consumers are doing. It's all anonymized, non-PII stuff, but there's some really cool technologies and ways to know that when I click on this, I'm also going to click on this. So we leverage heavily Wes and his team to build the right recommendations. And when you think about large-scale recommendations, I would think about Greg Linden from Amazon, who created the original collaborative filter. So people who buy this book also bought these books. That's a generic recommender engine and sort of one skill set within our department. We also have a lot of engineers moving data and keeping it all succinct so the rest of the department can actually use it. So,
my name is Aaron Weber. I'm the product manager at Spiral 16. We're a social media data collection, analytics, and monitoring solution. My background reads like a bad Hunter S. Thompson novel, so we're going to skip most of that. But I've been working with big data sets for about 7 years now. Starting on the analyst side and then eventually working over to design and implementation. Most of my job is trying to figure out what's the business case for what I'm doing with this data, what data am I collecting, and can I actually do something with it? And then I work with our team to figure out how do we get that insight and those nuggets out in a way that makes sense for our end users. This is a space that I was thrown into, I will admit, but it's one where Scott nailed it. This is where it's going. There's no choice in the matter. It's not a matter of I can do this or not. It's when do I decide to do this. If you're in the business of working with data, it will get there. My job right now is to make the decision of do I do this now? Do I wait 6 months? Do I implement a new solution? We started on an H-base. Do we move to Mongo? What do you do? There's a lot of decisions that go with working with big data, and my job is to somehow convince our team it's the right idea. So.
Cool. I'm Grant Stanley. I'm the CEO of Contemporary Analysis. We're an Omaha-based predictive analytics company. We got into big data science, predictive analytics back when it was called econometrics in 2008. So we were the first, and my team is not doctors. We're more like pirate kings. Because we were the first PhD academic-based sole predictive analytics company that I could find at the time in the world. I came from landscaping. I used predictive analytics there unknowingly. I just thought everyone collected data, analyzed it, and found patterns, and then pulled them together to make decisions when they were in junior high. But we ended up hiring a whole bunch of people just like me. We have a janitor who he was a janitor before, and in his interview he was just kind of sitting there just shaking, explaining how he'd optimized all these things in the hospital and figured out that if he was able to write certain phrases on these boards that he would get more people actually interacting with his cleaning staff, which in a hospital environment was very important. So it's just a whole group of guys who just love optimizing, love predictive analytics, and it's just what they do. It's a lot of fun. But it's been interesting to see an industry in its primordial soup since 2008.
My name is Ben Hemphill. I'm a system architect with Cerner Corporation. We're a healthcare IT company. My job is mainly around the hosting side of our business. So primarily we would host our Millennium stack of information. We've now started to break into kind of the big data side of things from the past 2 years, and I'm responsible for overseeing the operations of that.
Hi, I'm Ryan Brush. I also work at Cerner Corporation. I'm a distinguished engineer there, and my primary responsibility over the last couple of years has been really leading up Cerner's big data architecture. So we think there's a lot of opportunities in that space, and we're excited about some of the advantage of it, particularly since Cerner systems have, depending on the number goes up and down a little bit, about 34% of the acute care data in the United States. So we're pretty excited about the way we can apply some of these new things to that base. So I'm an engineer more than a data scientist, so I'm glad to hear that we have the PhDs down at the under end of the table that we can direct the hard analytics questions. But yeah, my responsibility is really the architecture and infrastructure and the design thereof for big data at Cerner.
Hello, I'm Scott Kahler. I just did a lot of talking, so my throat's hurting. I'm data. One of the roles I cover is data platform admin at Adknowledge. I take care of our big data stuff. I guess one of the things I would like to mention is that also when I talk about the people that do big data stuff at Adknowledge, I highlight our DA group, which does a lot of it, but really it permeates throughout our whole company. So like I know Martin, who's like a couple rows back here, he does similar kinds of things. Our whole company works using big data. So.
Cool.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Okay, so I'm just going to start like with a couple questions, and then we'll hand over it to the audience. So some of you guys want, we can take questions from you guys. But I guess I'll start it off with, what advice would you guys give to some of the people here who are thinking about, should I implement this for my own enterprise? What are some of the things that they should look for? From both the software perspective, a staffing perspective, and if it's even right for their line of business?
I think the first answer to that, though, is something that everybody up here knows is data for data's sake is noise. Without context, without something that you can pull from that data, you're just collecting for collecting's sake. Now, you can get lucky and do big collection and then hope one day down the line you figure out a way to pull something out of it. But at the end of the day, when you're making the decision, do I go down, do I start playing with Hadoop, which is a gateway drug, I assure you. You need to have that idea in your head of what am I trying to solve? What problem am I trying to solve with this data in the first place? Is this gross sales? Is it retention? Have that question in your head before you start, because that's going to drive everything else. After that it becomes, do I have the infrastructure to maintain this? Not necessarily from the hardware point of view, because as Scott pointed out, one of the things that I love about it, you can do it on commodity hardware. Do you have the human resources to do anything with it, and can you get your hands on them? Those are the first two considerations. Do I have the right reason, and can I support this if I go down this road?
Yeah, I would add to that from an analytic perspective. There's a great book called Competing on Analytics by Davenport and Harris. They're two Harvard professors. And they go through these real-world examples of Netflix, Haraz, Capital One, all these people that wanted to understand how to use data in analytics. And one of the things all of them talk about is, everyone has really good algorithms. But it's about who has more data about the consumer or the end user, and that's how you're going to compete on analytics, and that's how you're going to beat the competition. And that's really what you have to look for. What do I need from a business perspective exactly? And then how do I attack that aggressively? And there's some really, really good books around that, and some really good people have done this in the past. And I would start with those types of things. Get a research question. If I know I have some demographic data, then I really want to overlay that with some behavioral data or some social intent data or some offline behavioral data. And then how do I start building that stack of data? And then what kind of solution do I need for that? I mean, that's something that when I came to Adknowledge, we had sort of an older solution. Scott can probably laugh about it later, but it was really around what direction do we go in building this new analytic platform. And those business requirements, those business questions really drove how we built that. I mean, part of it was bringing in a systems architect to make sure that you have multiple distributed systems talking to each other and you can make real-time calls in sub-millisecond time and those types of things. But it all starts with, what do I have? What am I trying to answer? What am I trying to do? And then really going from there.
So, and I rounded out or whatever. So one of the guys in the audience is a navigator at Cannes, and he has a great way of relating with real people, which is great because in the data science world, it's a lot of psychopaths. But he figured out, we all come up with these grandiose schemes of how we're going to translate the business question to the research question. And he figured out that if you just ask why 3 times, That was kind of just the magic thing of figuring out, is it worth it? Is it the most valuable thing? Because the only way that you get political support, that you get the resources that you need, is if you answer a question that people care about. And he magically figured out that, you know, if you ask it once, you're going to get kind of the BS answer, you know, well, you know, because someone told me. And then you ask why 3, and if you ask 4, you're just annoying. So remember, the 3 whys will help you figure out the business question and figure out, is the research question answering the right business question?
Yeah, we'll move this over here. So from I'm primarily an operations guy, so I'll talk to any of you that might be on the technical side. When you're thinking about what you need, keep in mind most of the big data type architectures are almost completely foreign to the normal architectures you might be used to. So you're going to expect a lot of changes in the way you do operations. You're going to have to change a lot of the things you do. So that would be the first thing I really caution about exploring big data, is be prepared to have to change the way you operate.
I guess I would add to that, when you go to look to implement big data, you need to find the people in your group that are willing to love big data.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to force it on somebody. They gotta like it. They gotta like staying up late at night, playing with the architecture, playing with the algorithms, whatever it is. They need to want to mess with it because it needs to be messed with. It's not something that you can just drop in and it'll run. You know, you need to tweak it.
It's a very needy baby.
I personally don't know what Scott means, but
So I guess one of my next questions is, I mean, it seems like you guys have been in the game for a while, so you've sort of seen it from, you know, when it started catching fire. But where do you see it? You know, what are some trends you're seeing, at least, you know, even this year with big data? I mean, are there any trends in the industry or in terms of tools or new discoveries or anything like that, or that you can talk about?
Well, it's definitely starting to get more accessible for the person just jumping in. I mean, you know, some of the companies that were mentioned in Scott's presentation, you're starting to see management packages that can be run by one administrator who doesn't have to have a deep background. You're starting to see the ability to like very quickly spin off new nodes that dramatically reduces the amount of time that it would normally take to set up these distributed systems. But as for kind of overall trends, I think right now we're in that space where we know a lot of what can be done. The question is, what shouldn't we do? Because we're starting to get to the data collection point where we're really crossing boundaries. Now, you know, from the Cerner side, these guys have medical data. You've got political data that's out there. Now, kind of the point of the slides before about crawling to find potential donors. Well, those databases have existed for 15, 20 years now. It's just now they're publicly crawlable. And there are some rules about what you can and can't do with donor data. But as the desire to do something with this information grows and the technology gets simpler, now we start to have to ask the question of, should we be doing this in the first place? And most of the time I'm going to say it's yes, but I think everybody up here are sitting on data that they go, yeah, we're going to keep this one to ourselves for a while because we don't want to be that stalker person yet. Business case isn't there yet. So,
but I was actually going to approach the same question from a different light. I think that one of the trends that I'm seeing is kind of the cartelization of data sources. So people just have either through rules or kind of witch hunts, or just, you know, certain companies that acted like a nonprofit and then realized they needed to actually make money off their data, locking up and not letting people have access to it, saying I'm going to let you build a platform on it and then shut it down. I could see that really, it's happening with Twitter. I see that happening with Facebook. I see that happening with a lot of the government sites. You know, and most of the things, you know, over the course of history, we've introduced a new technology and everyone thinks it's great, and then there's a witch hunt, and, you know, people become Luddites. And really, at the end of the plateau is getting people back on the education of, you know, educating. I recently went through college, like in the last decade. So you used to say you put drinking photos on, and then everybody would say, don't put drinking photos on the internet. Well, then it was educating people, okay, don't put drinking photos on the internet, but it's also educating employers. Do you really want to employ someone who never goes out or has no friends?
It depends.
But I think that it's a big part of us as a community going out and educating people about, yeah, it is a little creepy, but as long as people are clear with their incentives, as long as there are two forces, that evil doesn't just take over, that there are good forces out there, I think that's a commitment we have as a community, is to educate people.
From a technology side, I would also say that MapReduce is wonderful. I absolutely love it. It allows me to solve many problems that would be very hard to solve otherwise. There are new technologies. We don't have to shoehorn everything into MapReduce if the problem is not best solved with that sort of parallelization technology. There are new ones coming out to address these new problems. I just was reading about Google Dremel and several new research papers that are published this year, or talks that are going to be at different web conferences this year, for different architectures around processing large amounts of data quickly. And as those grow, we'll slowly see some things trend away from MapReduce and fit with the tool that actually you can solve it best in.
Just from a offering standpoint, I think over the last year we saw almost every major player try to get in and offer something around a big data, whether it's a traditional Hadoop model or just shoring up their own infrastructure and making it even more scalable. Everyone is trying to get into this market right now, so I think we'll see a lot of culling of the week, that kind of thing. We'll start seeing some of these drop out, but right now it's a very open field as far as everybody's trying to get in. Nobody knows who's best, so it's very much a discovery phase right now for that.
Yeah, it's gone enterprisey when Oracle starts offering a NoSQL solution.
Yeah.
So, but that's part of, there's an upside and a downside to that. One is that it's becoming mature. It's becoming ready for enterprises where you don't have to be at Google in order to run this sort of thing, which is great. Some of that is also a reaction to frankly, the hype, that curve that we saw. And I think that there may be a number of problems that don't need a big data solution, but because there's so much excitement behind these technologies that we're riding that wave as well. So, I think that there's a huge opportunity here, but we also need to be looking at each of these with a critical eye. It's like, are we using the right tools to apply the problem? There's nothing wrong with non-big data solutions as well. So we've got to weigh that in when considering your usage of it.
I would also add that I think it's moving towards personalization. So when I've talked to the head of data mining for Bing, his name's Anthony Garza, mathematician, but one of the things they've invested in, not just billions of dollars into their platform, but it's really around personalization. So when you think of the old days of search, all of us that got to see search when it first came out, it was sort of a spray and pray, like one size fits all. So you Google something and it gave you sort of something very general, not very specific. And over time, it's become more and more personalized to the point where if you share a household with your wife and you're both searching on Bing, you're like, that's my wife. I don't want that, because it's so personalized, and sort of they're still trying to figure out how to do a lot of that stuff. So algorithmic, you're combining these analytics with big data structures in trying to find the right balance without really stepping over the bounds. And I think to your point, there's a lot of conversations, with legal, and, with an ad network like ours in KC around don't get too personal about it, because the FCC is coming down and hammering it. So there is a lot of be careful what you collect and make sure you're following, guidelines around that, because you can step over the line really quick. I think Netflix just got dinged with a big class action, and Google did too. So it can be easily done by big companies, and I think we just need to be careful that we're not overstepping the bounds of something that we wouldn't want put on ourselves, and we make sure it's general enough, but it's not too invasive into people's lives. You know what I mean? So there's really a tough balance there. And I think there's a large number of people that really try and balance that out, and then there's obviously the guys that maliciously attack you and stuff like that, which you can't control. But more and more of them are going to jail, so maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, I really didn't want to do any fear mongering on that point, because at the end of the day, this is helpful. It's the things that we have learned and the advancements we've made in various spaces because of the ability to do this now, it's incalculable. But I would like Bing to have like a sober search, drunk search, and then don't let those two results. Please do, would you? Oh, man.
Or just note government. You know, just like if you can do it for profit, that's great. I know what money is.
Yeah, I think with some of the personalization stuff, my manager said that he was searching, looking for a diamond tennis bracelet for his wife, right, on Amazon. Pretty nice. But it was supposed to be for her birthday. She got on the computer, started searching, and down in your recently looked at stuff, she knew what she was getting, you know. So the personalization issue is a big deal right now.
So I think we'll open it up some questions. So if you guys want to start raising your hand, we'll take a few questions and then move on to the next keynote. So.
Two things. First, I can appreciate your point about the evolution, taking the next step after MapReduce. Recently saw that article on the Wall Street Journal about that young boy who won, I forget what competition, using smarter algorithms that leveraged linear algebra and Markov chains. But my basic question for you guys, with your collective expertise, I think everybody in this room can acknowledge that every problem has a unique solution, and only by analyzing the problem to the nth extent will you come to a solution that's appropriate. But generally speaking, do you think it's becoming harder to justify spending large quantities of money on all-encompassing BI suites that don't incorporate machine learning algorithms? Do you think that that's going to go away in the future, or just become less harder to justify, rather?
Go ahead. Yeah, actually, so we're a group of pirate. This is why I call us pirates, because we are a technology company that believes that the future of technology is basically no technology. And we work really hard not to let lawyers and accountants and marketing people try to influence our technology decisions. So we've been able to build solutions that we can launch company-wide initiatives. Like we built a CI, we're monitoring all the construction activity in the country right now and political senses about it and the resources that those sites are using. It took us 6 months. Because we're using a lot of open source standards, we use the tool that is right for the specific technology. We kind of integrate it, but like on a really loose, you know, nothing is like automatically integrated. And that's been a huge boost to our business. Our customers like it, their users like it. Because if they got say, you know, if we did a report in like Tableau and they want it in LogXML, okay, sure, we'll put it in LogXML. So that would be if you let the business users run the technology, you get a little quicker, and with all the open source, you can do that.
I mean, I think it
But is it really that hard to stand up another, you know, to build that yourself?
You're right, but I guess the question, whether or not I phrased it correctly, is do you see a trend of, you know, a lot of the open source, more accessible packages and stacks integrating the machine learning side of things with the, you know, visualization side of things, with the, you know, distributed database side of things?
I personally do, having talked to lots of CEOs out there, you know, with new startups and whatnot. And a lot of it has to do with the cost-benefit analysis, right? So if I'm going to drop 7 figures on a BI solution, I can hire several Wes's to do that for me and a couple engineers to build the front end, and it's done. So it's really a cost-benefit analysis. And I think you're seeing a lot of people going to, what are some of the open source, Pentaho and things like that, and really just customizing themselves and or just building it flat out, like he's saying, with internal engineers. And we have a great company. We're a technology company, and we talked about Martin, but Nick's back there too in another division, and these are great engineers. We have a company full of great engineers, and you'll see ideas pop up when you have engineers doing some of the thinking, a lot like what he's saying, and you can build on that kind of stuff on reporting and customize it and then make it modular, and it can tap into the large data backend, and you can do lots of cool stuff with it. I think you're going to see a big trend away from that just from a cost-benefit analysis. And when you look at the dollars for dollar, you can do it cheaper yourself in most cases. Now, there's probably some edge cases where you're going to drop the money until you can hire them, or it's in the next, you know, budget review or whatever. But I think you're going to see more and more of that, because there's a lot of companies moving to like the contextual side, and you're getting petabytes of data in no time. And they're not going to they're not going to spend another 7 figures on a reporting UI or whatever. They're going to spend it on the people to manage the data.
And I think you'll see the same segmentation that we do in almost kind of any new piece comes up. You'll have, a niche of providers who are full service providers from cradle to grave. You'll have the open source side, and then you still have industries out there that are heavily regulated, that can't work with certain types of software. They're not allowed to, whether that's internal corporate governance or that's external regulations put upon them. So you're still going to see a mix of everything. There's always going to be, the various tiers available. It's not, at no point will it ever, I'm terribly sorry, we'll never go open source completely. It'll never happen.
I have seen, though, that, because we run a lot in the corporate governments, we do a lot in banking, insurance, healthcare, employment stuff. And we've seen a move, when we first come in, they have this strong, data can never leave our 4 walls. And then one of our pirate people explains exactly how they could get in by just making a phone call and being like, hey, I'm looking for that one guy. Oh, what's his name? He does this in this department. And get in. And so I see that's their understanding that you can do a lot with encryption. Obfuscation, not letting, keeping sensitive data together. That's a huge one. Don't leave your keys with your lock, please.
I think to your point, yeah, I think you can do the same kind of business intelligence, machine learning type things with what's available now. Especially with Google Journal coming out, being able to do quick ad hoc searches will definitely change the game on that a little bit. But I still think it's not as easy. Right, so you still have to make sure that you're hiring your people, you're setting the stuff up yourself. You have to do it, so it's not like going to be a turnkey solution. And like it comes down to the cost-benefit analysis. Is it going to be better for you to do it easy, or is it going to be better for you to do it cheaper? So.
One last thing on that: the people is, I think, absolutely right. So if I give you a business intelligence solution, and it has in it a neural network, as you say, and you say, okay, here's my data. Click the train button, you get out a result, and you go, well, is that good or bad? It did it, and it got this % accuracy. Well, can you make it better? Well, in order for the person to go in and actually make it better, they would have to know about neural networks, how they're trained, whether or not adding more hidden layers would actually change anything. So I think you still need someone with the knowledge of actually building that neural network from the ground up. To actually understand how to use the business intelligence solution that incorporated it to the best of its ability.
I guess one of the things that I've been reading a lot of recently is that finding big data people to process stuff is very much a challenge. So, I mean, we can say, well, you have people do it, and that's the best way to do it. But the problem is, right now, there's really not enough people to do it. So where are you going to find your data nerds at? If somebody's got a prepackaged solution that does it, and it stops you as a business owner, you think, from having to go out and get data nerds, then maybe that's what you think to use. So I don't think that it will go away. I think people will continue to buy that because they think, I don't know that that's the right solution, but I think there will still always be a market for that.
So anybody here from got a question?
My question is regarding the integrity of the data. When you collect lots of data, there's sometimes bad data that comes in. So what is the analysis in terms of, are you putting gates where the data is entering, or you just let the data flow through and do post-analysis to find anomalies and say, that's probably bad data?
Yes. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Yes. Everything's contextual. In some data sources you got to do your vetting up front. Sometimes you don't know it's bad until way down the line. It just really depends on what you're trying to achieve with it. But yeah, bad data's gonna get in. That's just all there is to it.
And that's certainly what we found. Data will come in, and especially in the healthcare space, there's noisy, there's incomplete data, there's inconsistent data, and really the first step is get the data to the point where you can analyze it, then improve how you analyze it again, and just iterate really quickly on that. And the first step is to just bring it together, into your system, in order to make that happen, versus trying to clean it on the edge as it enters the system.
And I think, again, it comes back to understanding the problem and finding the right solution for it. So like one of the things is we do a lot of predictive analytics. In predictive analytics, you're trying to find, you're building models of why things happen. You're not, we call it measuring versus counting. If you count and you say I have 3 and one of them does not really exist in the real world, then you're saying I have 3 and you really have 2. Where if you say that, you know, if this happens, and this happens, we typically get another one. You can tolerate more bad data. And that just comes back to what is the business application of that? I mean, if the spikes in from your servers are off, that's a bad thing. But if you're trying to figure out trends, if you add another server, what happens? It could be off a little bit. I don't know. We're not building bridges that people are going to have to cross, like where they would fall down and kill people. Morbid.
Wind brings down.
Yeah, I know.
So anybody over here have a question?
Actually, I've got 2 quick questions, if you don't mind. One, what's the operational changes that you were alluding to that basically have to happen, especially in an enterprise rollout with a existing solidified L2, L3 setup? And 2, how do you, or have you had any experience with graphing solutions in immutable systems and how that scales?
Sure. So as far as how things change, you know, with big data things, you're typically thinking parallel rather than serial, right? So now you're thinking about lots of cheap nodes, local storage, especially with Hadoop, where you're based upon. It's one of the few solutions. You know, we're starting to see more solutions come out this way that are built knowing about hardware limitations already. Right, so it's already built to take advantage of local hard drives that are slow. So you kind of have to think a little bit differently than your more traditional. Okay, I know Oracle. I give it the fastest drive I can. I give it the fastest memory I can. I give it the biggest CPU I can do, and that's how I scale it. Now it's more about how do I weigh, reliability versus scalability, and you have to start changing towards scalability. It also means you're using more data center space, right? So you have to be thinking about, well, maybe my data center is a little bit too architected. I'm wasting space here on things that don't need it, things like that. And as far as graphing things, we'll start seeing, there's lots of solutions for graphing out there. I'd say that there's lots of them that will scale immediately. Things like graphite come immediately to mind. So, I'll let actually.
So I assume you were referring to more of like graph-based databases rather than. Okay, yeah. So we haven't gotten into that very much at Cerner. I'm not sure if others on this panel might be a better comment on that.
We haven't successfully made any graph databases scale in our system. We brought in a couple, but they just didn't scale to the number of users we had in the framework that we had to work with. Yeah. The other side to this is my intern was doing it, so. The one I can't. I've right now drawn a blank on the name of the actual graph database.
Priority task. Huh?
Yeah, I will say that there's a lot that's really appealing about those, and I think I think there may be a future for graph databases and some of the things that we're doing. The particular problem spaces that I've been tackling just haven't really warranted that yet, but they're appealing because they're very I mean, the immutability, it's very easy to reason about and think about. It's good for the wetware, So I'm watching graph databases with interest, but I can't really comment on the specifics of using them right now.
Hi, you had mentioned how difficult it is to find big data people to do these things. How do you make the transition from small data, I guess, to big data? You have a lot of small data people out here, probably in this audience, who are saying, I want to do big data, whatever that we try to define that. How do you make that transition?
I guess for me to answer that question is kind of tough, because for me as a platform administrator type thing, managing a database to managing a set of nodes is just a little bit different mindset. But as far as on the user level, I'd have to throw that one down to that end of the table.
It's a challenge. I think you again, it depends on what you're trying to do and getting the right skill sets. So I, for example, restructured analytics entirely based on what I needed, and then I went after those people. And that can be at conferences, that can be building relationships with universities. I know K-State has an amazing computer science department. There's other great, computer science departments around that can help with some of the machine learning stuff and engineering stuff as well. And then just knowing other people in the industry. Something that really helped me years ago was working with a guy by the name of Usama Fayyad. I don't know if you guys know him. He's the former chief data officer from Yahoo. He built Yahoo Research Labs. He built Microsoft Research Labs. He's like a double PhD from Michigan and worked at NASA for a while. But he's sort of one of the guys you can talk to about who do you know that can help me do this. So it certainly helps to know people and to go to conferences to talk about those things. He runs a conference called KDD every year. This year it was in China, so I didn't go, but the last few years I've gone. It's a great way to look at upcoming research, to meet more people in this arena, which is knowledge discovery and databases, is KDD. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, and sometimes it just means you hire someone that can go out and do that for you. But it really just depends on if you want to start bringing people in and grow them, or start at the top down.
Well, just from personal experience, I'm going through a hiring round right now, and I've got lines out in every pond imaginable. I've got recruiters coming back and going, we don't know what these words are. This entire section, no one in the office knows what this is. And I've talked to applicants who may know it, who don't put it on their resume, because they're getting that kind of, what the hell is that? You made that up. So one of the reasons I'm happy this is happening is because this city in particular, we got a lot of data here, folks, but we don't have a big pool of this class. I'm not in this class, just I'm pointing to them, not to me, of talent, and we need to grow it. And the first step from a locale perspective is we're going to have to grow it internally. You're going to have to find the people that you already have that are already leaning toward this and help them learn and encourage them to learn. Because right now, locally, there's not a talent pool that we can just easily draw from. If you know one, tell me right now. But
tell me first.
But that's that's kind of the thing is the best thing's going to be from the hardware side. Do you have a sysadmin who's already good enough to move into a new arena of keeping the nodes alive? Do you have a DB guy who can migrate over to a NoSQL solution? Learn them internally. But on the other side of it is, though, that networking is a big part of it. Finding people that are already in this space, finding out, hey, who do you know? Who's out there? Who's hungry? Who's looking for extra stuff? Other than that, best of luck.
So the great thing is all these guys are trying to find people who currently exist with these skills. My company does a lot of people farming. You guys do data mining. We do people mining. And so what we've found is if we can find someone who's curious, there's the world of the internet. I remember when we got started in predictive analytics in 2008, we'd go hang out with economists and ask them questions about how they were doing things, and they would mention a term. And all we would take is that term, and we'd grab that term, and we'd write that down, and then we'd go back and do our project and make the money that they really wanted. And they were like, how did you learn how to do that? And I'm like, YouTube and Wikipedia. And so what we've done, and that is just an awesome thing. I love the internets. But we've institutionalized that. So we go out and we find people who are just really curious. I mean, we have a guy at our office who I told him that we have a tough culture, and he came back the next Monday, and he had gone to his friend who's a blacksmith and made a mace. Like, that guy can learn how to do NoSQL. It's amazing. And then we have there's internal learning things. You can get a wiki, but you got to have someone moderate it. and there's not a lot of people in the data space. There's a lot of teachers without jobs. So what we've done is we've found teachers. We have 3 teachers, and we have 20 people, so it's not a great mix. But their job is to go out Monday through Wednesday and learn what the people are learning, put it together or Wednesday and Thursday, and present it on Friday. So every Friday afternoon, we have classes that are moderated by people who are teachers, high school teachers. Even elementary school teachers can teach this stuff. And they're making videos and they're making books so that we don't have to rely on the people who are like, man, I think I'm going to know about this thing that my university doesn't currently offer because the university doesn't know about it and doesn't have the curriculum approved because the industry is still forming. We take creative people and teach them what the internet's already know.
I guess I'd say if you're looking to learn about how to do big data stuff, you've already got, let's say you're a SQL developer, right? There are solutions out there that are MPP SQL solutions. And it's not, I would say you need to learn about the particularities of those solutions. And that's what helps you jump to the big data side of things, how to process things in parallel as opposed to having it all on one node. So if you were to make the jump, that's probably a good place to start, is looking at, okay, in order to do MPP SQL, when I look at Greenplum, and what are the particularities about Greenplum? That stuff's available. If you want to look at Hadoop and you're a SQL person, you got Pig out there. You can get into Hadoop and start doing stuff in Hadoop using Pig. So usually I would believe that if you have some knowledge of data already, you can most likely find a big data solution that somehow relates to the data knowledge you already have, just doing it on a larger scale.
And just more generally, there's huge communities out there on the internet. Join the community if you're interested in a particular technology. There's mailing lists, there's case studies, there's all kinds of white papers. Just by following a mailing list of an interesting technology, you can probably have lots of good practical ideas, good practical case studies. So I'm just joining the community out there if you need to bootstrap, which frankly there's not enough people with these skill sets now, so many of us do need to bootstrap ourselves. And that's how I got started doing a lot of the big data stuff at Cerner. Just started plugging into that, and then do that a period of time, and you can build that expertise.
Yeah, I'm definitely a case of a in-house grow up type engineer. So very much we were given a task. I was the only one curious enough to go investigate it on my own. Therefore, I get the job, right? So I mean, it's kind of what it comes down to. Is as Greg mentioned, we definitely need to find those that are curious about this because it's very much a infancy type solution. I mean, it's getting better. There's documentation there now, but as far as having skill sets there, it's definitely not there. So I don't think you can walk down the street and say that person can do big data, that person can't. It's just another technology that needs to be learned, and people need to be willing to jump into that.
One more thing, I would say you need to be ready to fail, because
yes,
you will. I mean, you do so on a regular basis, learning the new technologies. You're not going to get it right probably the first time, the second time, or the third time, but you have to be willing to take those failures and learn from them and move on.
All right, I think we're going to wrap the panel up and move on to the next speaker. So thank you, guys.